All righty. So I think we are good to go. Serge, just a comms check real quick. Can you hear us loud and
Testing,
clear?
testing. Hello, hello. It's good.
Excellent. Sounds fantastic to me. All right. Well, Ray has done some awesome due diligence to get us all gathered here tonight. So I believe, Ray, unless you got anything else, Serge, it's over to you and Kris.
I like how you started it. Dearly beloved, we're gathered here today. Okay, let me zoom myself out of here so that Chris can zoom in. Sounds good? Now, we thank you for your consideration. We trust that you are all comfortable.
Thank you very much, Chris. We are.
Indeed. And please feel free to begin any form of inquiry.
Anyone?
Oh, we already doing questions. Right, can I kickstart? I'd like to ask about empathy, please. Could you please talk about empathy?
Hmm. Empathetically speaking, it is a very high quality resonance with another being. When you empathize with someone else, whether it is sorrow or joy, you share a particular kind of, again, resonance, a particular kind of vibration with them, though vibration is not necessarily a word we often utilize, but it is a shared experience. And it should also be noted that though you have feelings and emotions attached to such an experience, the actual empathetic connection is entirely intuitive. It is at that layer that you operate and you manifest the physical experience of it. But first and foremost, it is all telepathic, intuitive. So you share far more than what appears just at that physical human level. You may not necessarily recognize all of the symbolisms that are connected and shared, but you resonate with the person's moment. You may even feel their joy or their sorrow to the core of your being, because at that moment you are very deeply enmeshed into an experience of one kind or another, whether it is again joy or sorrow. When you enter into that connection, it does reward you to pay attention to the signals that exist behind just the physicality of it and connect with the spirituality of it. And that may open other horizons for you and the other individual in such a way that you may even connect with glimpses of other lives you have lived and shared similar moments or other issues. Because what you experience physically and the connection that is made spiritually or telepathically or intuitively is far greater. So you encompass a far greater range and depth of fulfillment at that moment. And notice that when you do have that kind of a connection with another individual, there indeed is a salve like state, as if somehow or other something in you is also healed, is also healing, because you operate simultaneously physically and psychologically. So it is in a certain way and kind of alignment with both of your states. But the major operating modality is intuitive telepathic. You then just play out the physical aspects of it. In fact, it could be said that your connection also flows through into various dream states, into dream time or psychological time. And you may have a vast number of experiences, but it has all been essentially brought down into that particular moment. So each moment, if you were able to peel it back, could reveal dozens or more moments outside the regular frame of reference you call time and space. Because the regularly experienced frame of time space is but a narrow bandwidth of something much bigger. Imagine you had a prism through which a beam of light is projected, so that the prism should show all the colors of the rainbow. But instead, you only see one. And so you are psychologically, as a species, more or less psychologically blind or colorblind, if you like. But the more you allow these kind of connections, the more your psychological color blindness recedes and you can experience more humanity. Because humanity is not just waking up, going to work, going to bed, waking up, going to work. That is such a small slice of human experience. You have feelings and you have emotions. You have umpteen flows of thoughts in your mind, thousands of them throughout the day. These are all connections, all of them. But you don't necessarily pay much attention. And this is how you have created a particular strategy as a species to be able to function within this particular continuum of space and time. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, thank you. And you answered my planned in follow-up questions as well. So that's amazing.
Hmm. Do feel free to proceed.
Oh, and how do we embrace empathy in our life? Like, for example, like can we feel the other people's sorrow without lowering our vibration? Is it doable?
It is very quote unquote popular to express things like, oh, this lowers my vibration, that lowers my vibration, this heightens my vibration. But ultimately, nothing can lower or heighten or disturb your vibration. You are a divine being. You can choose to enter into those experiences, but that is your choice. You do that to yourself. It is not an external force that obligates you or commands you to. Just like you have sovereignty over your mind and your thoughts. You do not have to listen or pay attention to any of your thoughts, but you do not have the training to determine and make that connection until you do, until you practice, and you make certain that self-mastery becomes your way of life, becomes your perception mechanism. In other words, no one can make you feel anything you do not want to feel. And that is a very loaded statement. Does that make some sense to you?
Yes. Thank you.
You are most welcome.
Thank you, Kris. I have a question about soul journeys or soul paths. I know I am here to be of service to all consciousness on the earth. Since we're one, I am just helping myself anyway. But can you elaborate on maybe some of the common soul paths for entities which are incarnating in the earth timeline?
It is a very interesting question. In some ways, you, how do we say, you dip your hand in the cookie jar, but for some reason that is not sufficient for you. You need the entire cookie jar. So you eat all the cookies. Fortunately, they are calorie free. We mean by that that the entirety of the human experience is sometimes distorted. So you may think that there are all sorts of forces out in the universe. And yet the reality is that you create those very forces. So you, as a multidimensional being, will always encounter your other dimensions. So your mind is a vast, vast expanse. And you may never be able to fathom how vast that is. But you have worked out a process whereby your experiences happen in a seemingly sequential manner, past, present, future, but they all exist in the present. The only thing different is the perspective or the perception. So you encounter many individuals. You, in that particular way, have expressed that you are here for the service of humanity, and yet the humanity you speak of is yourself. So you choose to interact with versions or aspects of your own self in a variety of ways, and they present to you in various ways. And yet, underneath all of that is you in different ways. So you are learning to love yourself in all ways that you can manifest. Does it make some sense to you?
Yes, it does. I really like that a lot. Thank you.
So anyone and everyone you meet can be said to simply be a different version of you, just like a diamond, a multi-facet cut diamond refracts light in a multitude of ways. So you refract self in a multitude of ways. One of those ways could be a monk in the 13th century. Another one could be a king in a far-flung future. Another one could be a being in another world. They are still various versions of you. You exhibit tendencies that are found in a, we will just use the word template, that is well beyond any notion that could be understood by the human mind. And yet, you still find ways to interact at that level. So kudos to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And on in regards to that soul path, I know that the entity Alexander says that sometimes our incarnations are chosen to close cycles of energetic loops where we
Yes.
may have caused harm, intentionally caused harm to another being, and then
Hmm.
we kind of switch roles in order for that to equal out until it is resolved.
Yes. Yes, indeed. In fact, the words you selected were chosen. Who did the choosing but you? And you choose to then experience certain opposites of yourself so that you can understand how this works. How do you create under those conditions? What kind of mind is at work? What kind of thoughts and feelings and mindsets are at work in this version of you, as well as that other version of you? So you are experimenting with yourself in a multitude of ways. And through this, you may indeed deeply come to appreciate just how varied the human expression is. It is not so much that you have dumbed down your energy by becoming physical and three-dimensional. It is also part of your multidimensional experience. If you are a multidimensional being, you may exist in all variations of dimensions. Third, fourth, fifth, 20th, 100,000th, however you like it. But you are there everywhere, and that is just a matter of perception. You exist simultaneously and do not exist simultaneously.
Excellent. I appreciate that detail. Thank you very much.
Indeed.
Hi there, Kris. Pleasure to
Indeed.
interact with you. So, perhaps a more basic question here. I've had very limited interactions with you before, at least in conscious awareness, but I'm just loving the concepts and information that you relay. And something that occurs to me is I hear a lot of this is the connections to what the entity people know as Seth. And I find a lot of the information very similar and pleasing in that way. And I'm just curious to know what is it about your information in relationship to Seth, or any information you'd like to share
Hmm.
about that, or the contrast between that information. Thank you.
So we have always referred to Seth as Uncle Seth. We are part of that vastness, that particular kind of entity or grouping in a way. And there are differences and similarities, say, as all members of a family may have their differences and similarities. This is how there is thriving and growth and expansion and understanding and the continuation of both knowledge and wisdom is to appreciate the differences and the similarities as merely reflections of each other. Just like you may have children, you may see yourself in your children, and at the same time, you may even wonder, who is this? Do I know this person? And you're quite content with the contrasts and the similarities that may exist because they are still part of a unit. And you may even reflect back on your childhood and wonder, who was that individual? That was it really me? Yes, and yet I am different. And at the same time, my future self is going to be different from who I am today. And yet we are all expressions of one beautiful experience. The flower always blooms. Consciousness is like a flower. It always blooms. It cannot ever not bloom. Forgive us for the double negative, but it cannot ever not bloom. That is its primary state, blooming. Does that make some sense to you? So we are related. We have always said that to Uncle Seth, and at the same time, we are different. And even though, for instance, some people thought and expressed the idea that Seth was a future Jane, he still stated, Uncle Seth still stated, that he has his own individuality. Just like you are your own individuality, even though you may remember a portion of you as this child, your childhood, but you are not that child. Do you follow?
I do.
So there are all kinds of beautiful, marvelous experiences that can be had. What keeps the human being from such experiences is the way you think about them. You may decide to categorize some experiences as negative and some as positive, and yet behind the scenes are all positives because you learn regardless. And notice we have a nice command of English because we did not say irregardless. We also like to express humor. So does that answer your question a little bit?
It does, and I particularly enjoy your expression. Thank you so much.
Indeed. And it would enhance your overall personality, if we may. To always consider, regardless of the situation, your mind is geared and is set to optimism. Even though the setting on the dryer says normal, warm, or hot, there is another, but this one is for the mind, optimism. Always veer, regardless of what happens, always turn it on to optimism. It is built in to your cellular structure. It is viably connected to your human growth physically as well as spiritually. You cannot escape. You can ignore it, but you cannot escape it. Does that make some sense to you?
Absolutely. It's part of my formula for success. Thank you.
Indeed, it is. Please feel
Hello.
free to continue.
Yes. Good day. How are you today?
We are always very optimistic.
I'm just wondering if you actually answered the question I had. And that question is, it occurred to me relatively recently again that we maybe make a huge big deal out of all of this life or living of life from the human perspective. So, is there one thing or two things or three things that you would say from a human perspective we should do in order to just live our best life and not make this life thing too complicated?
There are indeed a few things because we always like to have a grain of salt or two in that way. First off, your human experience is not antagonistic to your spiritual experience. One is bound in flesh, and the other one leads you to greater depths. But they are expressions of the same thrust or drive for life. And there are three other little ones. You may or may not be familiar with ancient Greek myth of Hercules, and the three-headed hydra-dragon. The three heads of the hydra are very symbolic, and they represent greed, gossip, and envy. And Heracles and his companion were meant to represent the human divine taming those three different toxins, if you like, of greed, envy. And these three things are both easy to manage, but difficult if one does not understand how it can poison the mind. Does that make some sense to you?
It does. So, are you saying to stay away from greed, gossip, and envy?
Yes.
That's
So you
doable.
would simply pay attention to yourself, your thoughts and your feelings. And if one or two or three of them show up like the head of the hydra, of course you don't need to cut your own head off, but you simply need to recognize that these things do harm you. They don't harm anyone else, but they harm you. So keep that in mind, and you will
Yeah.
find that your life is much simpler this way. And it
All right.
behooves you, as an intelligent human being, to recognize where this may come from. Whether you have some form of insecurities, bring that to the surface of your mind, deal with it properly, and turn your mind into your best friend, not your enemy. Use your mind to grow as opposed to fear growth. Does that also make sense to you?
Not quite.
Hmm.
How
The
do I feel the
mind,
difference between growth and feeling growth? Thanks.
if you notice, say, you have opportunities to experience something new, something exciting, a new chance at life, and then you begin to speculate, well, perhaps I am best to stay at home. I feel safer there. You might be missing out on some great opportunities. Think of it this way. A bird who has never flown and is in a cage all its life may look at the bird out the window flying and think what a crazy fool that bird is. He could get eaten by the fox. The hawk can hunt him down. I don't have those worries because I am safe in my cage. But truly, who is the one experiencing the best life?
The one flying?
Yes, because it enjoys the thrill of life and even the thrill of a chase, whilst the one in the cage may get fed, may keep warm, but it will never know the joy and thrill of spreading its wings and flying high into the sky where freedom is. So by paying attention to your thoughts and your states of mind, you first of all begin to understand the process of reality creation. And secondly, you begin to appreciate just how much freedom you have when you don't let your thoughts and your minds get the best of you. Does that make some sense to you?
It does make some sense.
Indeed. So enjoy the freedom of being outside the cage.
Thank you.
Indeed.
So can you, it looks like I have my microphone back. So my question has to do with this, and it's something you touched on a little earlier. It has to do with, of course, we live in the spacious present, and that means we get to turn our focus wherever we want because it's spacious. It's everything is available to us in this now moment. Now, if I understand correctly, one of the most powerful things we can do in our reality is give up everything that we are, including our beliefs, in order to remain in that now moment and maintain our focus.
Might we be so bold as to look at the words or the sentences you used and instead phrase it this way? Yes, you can give up everything you are in order to become everything you are. There
Yes.
are subtleties and nuances in that beyond the scope of the conscious ego. But all in all, you are only a prisoner of time and space if you so choose. So basically, your greatest tool, your greatest resource is choice. How you choose to live your life, what kind of thoughts that you choose to harbor or give rest to. You are not ever fated, nor commanded by anything or anyone to do what you do not want. So if, for instance, you have a particular set of experiences in your life, whether it enriches you in a particular way or saddens you in another, those experiences you have acquiesced to. It would not happen. And you may not think, well, I didn't choose to go through these troubles and tribulations, but you might have, not necessarily consciously. You have to dig deeper. Your conscious mind is just the surface of the pond with the ripples. The subconscious mind is the entire ocean. So look there. Does that make some sense to you?
It makes a lot of sense to me. Now, just to continue a little further with what you were saying, so as so in the creation of my life, the secret is where, in terms of focus, where am I putting my consciousness and how am I holding it there? So, am I conscious, for instance, of being optimistic? Am I conscious of being healthy? Am I conscious of the enormous wealth? Am I conscious of my connectedness to all that is and everything, therefore, in all that is? So,
you would be conscious to the degree that you're capable of.
Yes.
So if you were to look back at your entire life, let's say perhaps 25 years of that life, because you can't be that much older. Looking back at all that life, and you may think, oh, these things I might regret having done. This may not have turned out so well. This is something I might not have chosen. It happened to me. We would look at it as follows. Everything that you went through, every stage, every breath you took because it is yours. So you own all of that. The judgments you place upon it may not necessarily be accurate. You can look at all of your trials and tribulations and say, yes, that was a damn good life. I had troubles and tribulations. I sweated a lot. And yet, here I am. A beautiful being. I am radiant with life. And I am conscious of all of what I want to pay attention to. And if there is a new stream of thoughts come to me, I choose that as well to examine it. Does that make some sense to you?
Yes, yes. I don't really pay much attention at all to the past. I'm really much more focused on trying to hold my focus in the present. And by focus, I mean my consciousness. So, for instance, if there's something in my body that I want to deal with, or if there's something in my life, say around abundance or some such thing like that, the key I'm asking about is the key to that health, the key to that abundance is holding my consciousness in that place and not letting it drift, so to speak, to other places or become involved in the big three that you mentioned or become involved in the world in a sense.
So you may not necessarily realize that in many respects you straddle many different worlds at once. The physical world, the mental world, the psychological, the psychic world, the spiritual world, and yet at the same time, you experience yourself as the best yourself you can be. So your consciousness may or may not necessarily always be focused where you want it to focus. You can rein it in, and at the same time, you also have the presence of mind and the awareness to let it roam freely so that it may bring you more experience. Either way, even when you think I should be presently focused and not focused in the past, even that is still in the present moment.
Yes.
The trick is, what is the perception of the past? What is the perception of the moment? What is the perception of the future? Because they exist on a simultaneous timeline. And at the same time, you nor time really exist. And at the same time, you exist. You are and are not at the same time. So you may have all sorts of meanings attributed to the world, whether it is the world of your thoughts or your feelings or the so-called outside world. These are all meanings and attributes that you give it. But above and beyond that is the maker of meanings, you. You are different from all of that. You are different. You are more than the sum of all of your parts. You, as you play with these concepts, you become more and more aware of just that, that you are the maker of your meanings. Apart from that, there is nothing. So each and every one of you are or is the one that gives your world meaning. If not for you, is there any meaning to anything? So there are some deep metaphysical truths that are still yet to be uncovered by your species. And yet you are just scratching the surface. And that in itself is so beautiful to watch as your species or members of your species grow. And you are, as we suggested, all lovely blossoms. Does that make some
Thank
sense to
you,
you?
Chris. Yes, it does, Chris. Thank you. I'm very, very appreciative. Thank you.
You are most welcome indeed.
Hi, Chris.
And do we know you?
A little bit.
Please feel free to commence.
The way that you just ended with Miles, just it was perfect blending. The lovely and the flowering, blossoming. So I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on the three-headed dragon: gossip, greed, envy, and sort of get a little perspective on how to tackle some of that in somewhat practical ways. But it seems to me, to begin, that the three are very related, and that in just thinking a little more about it, envy seems to be a feeder for all of them. And
They are
so
all triggers in a way.
the all triggers, yeah.
Yes. And in the mythology, of course, it is a three-headed single being. So they are all attached. They all belong to the same family. The interesting thing is, back in such a time, humans, like today, all struggled with various systems of beliefs, today or then. And the main point of this is that this is about self-mastery. Do you let your feelings and emotions get the best of you? Do you feel powerless when such emotional states come over you? Do you fly off the handle, so to speak? Or are you able to separate yourself, knowing perhaps that you are upset or angry about a thing, but you do not let it get the best of you? That is actually a beautiful advancement that you can recognize, but you don't let it take over, which means that you have far more freedom to eventually let these things go. wherein you might not even see them in other individuals because it no longer has any roots within you. All human beings have this capacity we spoke of earlier for optimism. This can play a particular and significant role, that you are optimistic that whatever you see as a flaw within your own self can be used as a tool to become more than what you were yesterday, more than what you were last week, more than what you were 10 years ago. Always more. You expand. You take in more than whatever you conceived of as possible. And eventually you shed those layers. You let go of these coverings to reveal that deep within you, and we don't want to use the word pure because that is a misnomer, but to reveal within you that there is a being that actually loves. At the core of your heart beats a, let us put it to you this way, a tiny quantum-sized supernova of love that illuminates your entire inner universe. And that is reflected in how sunlight, the sun planet, or even supernovas illuminate space. There is always a reflection within that is reflected outside, and vice versa. Microcosm, macrocosm. Does that make some sense?
It makes a great deal of sense. And your analogies also bring a lot of interesting visualizations that I have had.
Indeed, they do. That is their purpose. For you
Yeah.
see, as we explained earlier, whenever there is an empathic connection between two or more individuals, it actually occurs first and foremost at that intuitive, deep telepathic layer. The symbols, the images that come from that carry communication. They are like little packages of data, just like the information that goes from one computer to someone else miles away or countries away in the form of an email. It is just a stream of data. But the computer has an interesting capability of transforming the string of data into what appears on your screen as letters, which form words, which form sentences, which form paragraphs to give you a concept. The same occurs at that inner layer. So you are just, in some ways, incredible living computers. Except you are more than just nuts and bolts. Does that make sense to you as well?
Makes a lot of sense. And it's very beautiful as well.
The main thing is this little idea that deep in the core of your being is a quanta-sized supernova illuminating the entirety of your being. Once in a while, it wouldn't hurt for everyone to just muse on that.
Indeed. Thank you, Kris.
Indeed, and we are happy that you have taken our little word, indeed, so very nicely.
Yeah, very well. I'm going to water the flower.
Indeed.
And you know what I mean. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Please feel free to continue.
Hello, hello. I don't know if it's my turn, but I'm happy to connect with you.
Well, it is now.
I have a question. When I was young, I was dreaming every week that a pack of wolves was coming in my dream to pick me up and take care of me. And it was kind of amazing, the situation and the way they take care of me, the way they teach me something in the dream. From your point of view, what is the difference when you dream about wolf or dog?
A dog is domesticated. It is considered man's best friend. A being that would often give its life for its person. A wolf is a little more on the wild side, but it has a connection with a deeper kind of earth energy. And wolf is an earth symbol, but it is also connected to the moon. You, of course, have always heard of wolves howling at the moon. Not because they think it's a big bulb of light in the sky, but because they have an instinctive connection with something bigger than themselves as wild creatures. And in the dream, it could very well represent that there is a wild aspect of your consciousness that once in a while would visit you in your dreams to teach you, to care for you, not unlike Remus and Romulus, raised by a mother wolf, a she-wolf, imparting deep knowledge about life. Even though dogs are social creatures, wolves have a particular social structure, much different than dogs, but reflected nonetheless. But a wolf has a very particular order, and they take care of their elderly in a particular way. You would have symbolized a aspect of your nature that you might have considered a little wild, perhaps even a little frightening, because to the ordinary individual, a wolf may be a little fearsome because it is wild. There is a wild part to your own energy that you are appreciating. Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. But thank you, thank you. Last question. What was your last human life?
One of the last ones is actually a very interesting individual that we consider this a last one because we don't consider time linear.
Yeah.
But one of the most recent ones was someone by the name of Hildegard von Bingen, a German abbess of incredible depth and wisdom, one that was also fearsome, a feminist before feminism was around. She stood up to bishops and popes because she had managed to win the favor of the emperor. She was crafty, she was extremely erudite, a great mystic as well, interpreting the symbolisms within her time frame. And we have a great resonance with that particular self because she incorporated and encapsulated some of our own states of mind, states of awareness. So we have a love for all of the different selves that we have, but this one in particular, because she was so feisty. So if you want to, you can definitely look up Hildegard von Bingen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
You are most welcome.
It's lovely to speak with you.
Indeed.
My question, funnily enough, tags right on the back of Patrick's question. Last April, a high content wolf hybrid came into my life very unexpectedly. Not something that I consciously asked for, but obviously something that I needed. And it's been a very challenging year working with her and training her. I'm still discovering why she came into my life. And part of me is coming to the conclusion that it's associated with me transforming in some way for new energies that have started to appear, but I'm not sure. And I would really appreciate some insight as to the presence of her presence in my life. She's an Arctic wolf, timber wolf.
There are many layers here. We would like to explore some of it because it might take a while. But you said some energies are appearing into your life.
Yes.
Do you remember that? Almost at the very end.
Yes.
Now, what does this being represent to you? First thing that
The
comes to
ener-
mind.
It feels very ancient and something that I feel a little bit afraid of.
And again, you mentioned energies come into your life. We would like to remind you that nothing can come into your life unless you created it. There is no external influences or circumstances that can affect you in that particular way. Now, this being or representation, yes, it can feel actually quite ancient, but it is your energy in another time frame, in a way, in kind of wild and wise representation of a part of yourself, or you can use the word soul if you like, but a part of yourself that simply does not necessarily always fit in the preconceived notion of whom and what you should be. So it is representative of an expansion of consciousness, becoming aware of another dimension of yourself. Just as if you lived in a great big house, big mansion, and all of a sudden you may think you know all the rooms, and then out of the blue, you discover that your house has more rooms than you ever thought possible. Different aspects of you. Does that make sense so far?
Yes, it makes sense so far.
So this particular aspect represents an ancient part of self, to put it in those terms, even though you are eternal and there is no such a thing as ancient or new, you just are. But in your terms, it is significant that you have labeled it ancient because you see it as a source of wisdom, and perhaps even a wild kind of wisdom that does not conform to the way things, let us rephrase that does not conform to the expectations that you may have about things. So it is an opportunity to tap into a vast field of creativity and yet maintain a certain order within your growth. Does that?
That makes sense. And so the presence of my wolf pup, is her presence to assist me in holding that frequency of contact?
It is there to show you that you have nothing to fear. You could say it is like your guard dog.
Okay.
So it will, in a way, walk side by side with you, neither in front nor in back, but side by side.
Are the challenges that I have encountered with her over the last year, which have almost driven me to the nut house, associated with issues related to fear of this contact?
Perhaps fear, but at the same time, what kind of fear? The baseline answer would be a fear of straying from what you think should be normal. And yet, nothing is normal in the world, only what you agree upon as normal. And yet you have a certain kind of wild abandon with your thinking and the way you want to live that life. And sometimes you may feel pressure that Other people might not like who I am.
Yes,
That is a reflection of you, not other people.
I see.
Does that make
That
sense
makes
to you?
sense.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
Whenever you think this person or that person or other people might not like me or like me in this particular way, has nothing to do with them. It is you, whether you like yourself this way or that way. Are you willing to lovingly embrace all of you? You do not have to answer that, but you can think about it.
That's a wonderful reminder. Thank you very much.
Indeed, you are most welcome.
Thank you.
Anthony, you want to slip in one more and then we'll get to Tom?
Indeed, as you wish.
Sure. Hi, it's my first time interacting with you this way, but I'm loving every second of it. So I'll ask two very quick questions, and whichever one you think is more important, I'll receive the answer. One of them is people who say that they are very empathic in such a way where after they talk to someone, they feel their energy, quote unquote, on them for several hours after. What type of advice to give to people who are having this sensation. And the other would be about your opinions on the concept of privacy and how much a person should share, or if they should ever not divulge the whole truth. So whichever question you think is more appropriate. Thank you so much.
Perhaps both, but keep your first question in the background for now. Let us address the second question of privacy. Now, in a certain way, nothing is private. Telepathically, you are all aware of everything. Everyone is aware of you. You're aware of everyone at a deeper psychological level. Nothing is private. On the other hand, you can determine what you want to share with someone and what you don't want to share with someone. That is your business. And do not let anyone shame you simply because you decide this is private and this can be shared. Does that make sense so far?
Right. So in my case, I feel a tendency to always be very honest with whatever people ask me, but sometimes things about me aren't just about me, they're about my family, my friends, and then I'm more private than I would be because it involves other people. And so I'm just curious to what how I
So
honest.
you determine, you make the determination of what you share or what you want to share and what you don't want to share. You might recognize that there are things that you intuitively know what to share with someone else. There are things that you can make a decision. Do I want to share this with someone else or not? And then you can also contemplate the idea that you might not want to share anything with another individual. The choice is yours to make. So consider the three. Which category do you want? And act accordingly. That maintains a certain integrity because you don't want to share information about other people with other people again that may dilute your own integrity. Do you follow?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of real life examples because sometimes I might say something that seems very not private to me, but then a family member will say that that was more private than
Yes, we understand. And
yeah.
you can learn to grow in that area. You can determine if
Okay.
someone shares something with you, then you are not obliged, nor maybe even should you share it with someone else if it was done in confidence.
Sure.
Now, the other part of your question, do you remember it?
Um, uh,
About energy and
yeah.
empathy.
Yes.
Yes. So Someone may feel that they shared energy with someone in one form or another, but they still feel that hanging around. Mm. Or they may even feel drained by it. Since every individual creates their particular reality, then look towards your own self and how you are dealing with the energy. If someone may have said something to you and you feel unsettled by it, then you can determine why and whether you should or should not release the energy. You can make that determination. For instance, this goes back many, many years ago. Joseph worked as a masseur. And one particular client, Joseph felt somehow or other that there was a drainage, even to the following day. So he asked his inner self, what is this? And then it answered his inner self and let him see that there was an energetic attachment between him and the other individual. And Joseph wondered, Joseph is he who we speak through, how to deal with that. And he was shown a pair of scissors. Just cut that thread and immediate release. So this is just a visualization, but you can utilize your mind in order to determine what you want to do, how you want to deal with certain situations. But always know, first and foremost, that you are the creator of your situation. You own your situation. The common vernacular for this is own your shit. Own everything that you do. Do not let yourself be convinced that someone did something to you. Someone said something to you that hurt you. Just know that how you respond or react is your business. And if you don't like how you reacted and how the reaction involved certain energies, then immediately disengage from it. Just immediately pull back and say, yes, I own this, and it ends now if it is unpleasant for me. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. So if someone comes to me and they are saying that they're trying the scissor visualization and they're trying to own it, and they're still feeling that person on them, what advice could I say to them?
So it is not the other person. It is the one that is still having the situation.
Okay.
They are holding on to it for some particular reason of their own. Because no one, again, absolutely no one, energetically or otherwise, can make you feel anything that you do not want. That is what it means to be a conscious creator. Nobody creates your situation for you. You do that. So take your mind away from it, focus on something else. Take deep breaths, and the situation will end when you shift your mind away from it. If you keep going back there, you will keep feeling it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, great. Thank you. I really appreciate all of this. I really like it.
Always keep in mind that you are the boss of your life. Does the boss take orders from the employee? No. Correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank
So
you,
be
Kris.
the boss of your life.
Thank
Now,
you.
please do feel free to proceed however you want.
That is all the time we have for today. It's been a
Indeed.
pleasure.
We are most grateful for all the lovely blossoms that are in the process of evolving.
As we are for you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kris.
Thank you very much, Kris.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Serge.
And thank you, Serge.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
You know what that means.
So it was a good chat.
It was an
Absolutely.
excellent chat. Excellent.
Cool.
Lots of good info.
Okay, guys. Enjoy the weekend.
Are you going to stick around for Tom a bit? Or are you going to?
Yeah. I can. It's still early enough, so.
Okay. And Christian, if you want to do the deed and turn off and turn on.
I'll get to it. Thank you so much for joining us, Serge. That was awesome.